Now that you're done filling the first four forms, you have to move to the meat of this application, which is these three forms here, the IMM 1344, IMM 5532, and the IMM 5533. So this one here is the checklist. I encourage you to leave that at the end because it's going to serve as like the kind of summary of the application to make sure that all the forms are there, all the supporting documents are there, and that you have all the signatures at the right place. But we're going to start here with the IMM 1344, which is the undertaking and sponsorship agreement. So you can download it by clicking on the link. It's going to download a file like that. I encourage you to download it on your laptop so you can open it with a PDF reader. So this is what it looks like. Once you finish filling it, you're going to validate it and it's going to generate a barcode. And with that barcode, you could actually upload it. For the first part, I encourage you to click process, even though your application might not be eligible, because worst case, you lose $75 and you won't be waiting forever. So, second question that's pretty obvious, language of correspondence. Is there a cosigner on this application? It relates to the fact that there are two people financially responsible for the principal applicant. Here we're going to say no. Here you enter your family name as well as the given name. This is for the principal applicant, meaning the person requesting a visa. The date of birth, the principal applicant is your. And here you answer the relationship between the sponsor and the principal applicant. In our case, it's going to be spouse. So we're going to click spouse living outside Canada. And you don't have to fill this detail. Here you enter the sponsor personal details, so that's the name. If you have used any other name in the past. By other name, here it only refers to official name. So somewhere where you had an ID with a different name. If it's just a nickname, don't mention it and click no here. Okay? Then you have your gender, date of birth, place of birth, and the country, and your status in Canada, whether you're a citizen by birth, by descent, a naturalized Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or an Indian. Here they mean not Indian from India, but Indigenous Native Canadian. If you're a permanent resident or a naturalized Canadian citizen, you have to enter the date on which you obtained your citizenship or your PR, as well as your unique client identifier if you are a permanent resident. So here you complete with your name, your current marital status. Here you have to enter married if you're married, and the date in which you enter this marriage. You enter the name of your spouse, as well as if you have previously been married before, you answer yes or no. And if yes, you have to answer more information because you can't have two marriages going on. So if you were married in the past, you need to have your divorce certificate before you can sponsor somebody else. So in our case, we're going to click no. Here you have to enter contact information, your address, your residential address, as well as your telephone number and email address. This is the most important field here because CIC will communicate with you through email. So make sure you enter an email address that you check regularly and that won't go straight to spam. And here you have to answer whether you're living in or outside Canada. Are you a Canadian citizen living exclusively outside Canada? See who can sponsor. And if it's the case, you click yes. In our case, our applicant lives in Morocco with her husband and they intend to move to British Columbia. So we're going to click immediately after my spouse, common law, or conjugal partner, and dependent children become permanent resident. I intend to live in a Canadian province or territory other than Quebec. Here, this is important because for all provinces in Canada other than Quebec, you have to prove that you are financially able to sponsor your spouse and their family members. So you'll need to show your T4, for example, your proof of income. If you're working in Canada, you have to show a work contract, etc., etc. If you are planning to live in Quebec after your PR, you don't have to do all those things, and you will just click the province of Quebec here. Okay, so for the sponsor eligibility, you need to answer properly, otherwise you won't be eligible. Are you 18 years of age or older here? That's a yes. Are you a Canadian citizen or permanent resident? That's a yes. Are you sponsoring a member of the family class or a member of the spouse or common law partner in Canada class? Yes, because we're sponsoring a member of the family class. Do you reside in Canada and in no other country? Here we're going to click no. If you answer yes to question 5 and you are sponsoring a spouse, you are not eligible to be a sponsor and you should not submit your application. So this is important. Here's question 5. In the 5 years preceding this application, did you become a permanent resident after being sponsored as a spouse? Here, that's not the case. Our sponsor is a Canadian by birth. So question 6, have you submitted a previous application in respect of which a final decision has not been made? That's a no. Are you in receipt of social assistance for a reason other than disability? That's a no. Are you an undischarged bankrupt under the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act? Also no. Have persons or you previously sponsored or their family members received social assistance? That's a no. Did you co-sign an undertaking? That's a no. Have you been ordered to leave Canada? No. Are you late in making a required payment? No. Are you currently detained in jail? No. Obviously, you can understand why if you answer yes here, you're going to be ineligible as a sponsor. Have you been convicted of sexual offense? That's a no. Are you in default of a court order? That's a no. And question 16, are you the subject of an application to revoke your Canadian citizenship? No. Are you the subject of a report on inadmissibility? That's also no. And finally, have you been charged with an offense under an act of parliament punishable by maximum term of imprisonment or of at least 10 years? That's a no. Okay. So once you do this, you can validate here. It's not going to work because we didn't fill up this. But when you validate, I'm going to show you what it looks like. Once you validate, you're going to have a yes here, and you're going to have your name as well as the date of birth at the top. You can see it here, name of the principal applicant as well as the date of birth. And most importantly, you're going to have all the barcodes at the end. So you can see the barcodes. You need to make sure that you sign these parts. So with the name and the date, okay? And once this is completed, you're going to be able to upload it to your portal. So here we have it. We're going to upload it. And once we do, you'll see that we'll have the little green check mark here. Okay. Now, once you're done with the IMM 1344, this is for the sponsor. So that is the sponsorship agreement and undertaking. And basically, this is where you sign to say that you are willing to pay for the person you're sponsoring to come to Canada. After that, we have the IMM 5532, which is the relationship information and sponsorship evaluation form. So same thing, you click download here. It's going to open this file. You can download it on your laptop and open it with a PDF reader. And this is the form for sponsorship evaluation. You can see it's quite a lengthy form. We have 8 pages, but we're going to go to the main part. So the principal applicant is the person, again, asking for a visa, and the sponsor is the Canadian citizen or the permanent resident sponsoring them to Canada. So you have to enter the name, the date of birth, and the client ID if you have one. And here, this is the part A for the sponsors to be filled out. And you have to enter the employment history. Make sure you read all these instructions to fill it properly. And then you have to answer whether or not you have sponsored somebody else in the past. So in our case, that's a no. You go to question 3. If you answer yes, you have to fill out the information about the person you sponsored. So question 3 is if you have other people that are dependent on you financially. If not, you could just answer none or not applicable. And here you have to respond what is your level of education with the number of years completed for each level. So primary school, how many years, secondary school, college or university, and postgraduate studies if you have any. And here you enter the list of your addresses in the past 5 years. So for example, if we enter the first address from June 2020 to May 2024, the second address has to end at June 2020, okay? So you leave no gaps in between. This is crucially important because if you leave a gap, it's going to delay your application and it's going to put you in trouble. So we don't want that. Even if you went back to your parents' home, you enter what was in between here. You leave no gap. So this one ends in July. This one starts in July, ends in June here. This one must start in June. All right. And you enter all the details, the city or town. If you don't have a postal code or a province, you leave it blank, but you enter the country. Okay. Here we come to the residence in Canada. Do you live in Canada now? That's a no. And you have to enter when you last lived in Canada. When do you plan to return to Canada to resume residence? This I usually tell my clients to do put 12 to 15 months after the application because roughly the family class application takes 13 months. So let's say we are in April 2024. We're going to say that we're going to go back to Canada 13 months after, so June 2025. Okay. And where do you plan to live when you return to Canada? This is where the city where you intend to live, and it's usually the city you have ties to. If you are living in Quebec, you won't have to show the proof of your financial ability to sponsor. Outside of Quebec, you will. So just keep that in mind when you fill this out. Okay, previous relationship. If you have been married or a common law relationship in the past with another person, you have to answer the details. And here is the consent to disclose. Just click yes, sign the declaration, and put the date on it. Part B is the information about the principal applicant. So here, question one, before this relationship, was your sponsor related to you in any way? This is relates to arranged marriage. For example, if you were cousins or family relatives, you have to enter that. If no, you move on to the next question. Do you have any relatives living in Canada? If you do, aunt, cousin, doesn't matter, you enter their contact information here as well. Question three, have you been married or in common law relationship with another person? If that's a yes, you enter their details. If no, you move on. And here again is the consent to disclose. I encourage you to say yes. You sign here and you date. And then you move to the last part of the form, which is the information about the relationship. This is extremely important because this is where you tell the story. By story, I mean where you met, under which condition, how you tried to be together, what happened, why couldn't you be together, things like that, and what brought you to apply for sponsoring your spouse to Canada. So you have the first question, when was the first time you met in person? You enter the date and the place, and you have to describe the circumstance of your first meeting here. So did anyone introduce you? If yes, who's that person? Here, did you have any contact before you met in person? So this is people who meet online, for example, and you click yes, and then you're going to have to enter the details. Are you living together now? If yes, you have to enter all the details. You can see how long have you been cohabiting or living together. Give the period you have been living together after your conjugal relationship started. And here you have the definition of conjugal relationship. But basically, whether you have been living together or not, you need to explain. And in your explanation, you need to give the dates, you need to give the location, and you need to remain factual. State all the facts, the reason why not, and keep it concise because you don't have lots of space, but you want to convey as many facts as possible. Okay, question four. If you are not living together, have you visited each other during your relationship? If yes, you have to provide the details, all the trips you did together, and you need to support pictures for that later, or like plane tickets, and prove that you have been visiting each other abroad. And if no, you have to explain why. So if it was persecution, for example, or let's say the borders were closed during COVID, or whatever the case might be, you need to explain and prove that you tried, but you couldn't for reasons that were outside of your control. And if yes, you have to give all the details. Usually, it's the Canadian citizen who travels to their spouse location because the spouse doesn't have a visa, so they can't come to Canada. This was the case for our applicant. I did just stayed with the host family in Morocco. What language do you use when communicating with each other? This is pretty easy. How often do you communicate when you are not together and how? Make sure you enter as many details as possible. And here it's about the social proof. So, do your close friends, family, and children know about your relationship? If yes, then you need to provide pictures later on. And if no, you have to explain why are you keeping it secret. So you can see if yes, you have to give the name of the people who know and how they're related to the sponsor or to the applicant. If you are married, you need to answer this. Was your marriage arranged? For our candidate, it wasn't the case, so we click no. And if yes, describe how the marriage was arranged, by whom, when, where. Again, remain factual. You give the dates, you give the context, you give the location, and you say exactly what happened. Were there formal ceremonies or events to recognize or celebrate your relationship, engagement ceremony, traditional customary marriage, etc.? So here, if you were married, you click yes, and here you have to explain only if there were no ceremonies. So if it was like a hidden relationship, or if there was persecution or things like that, make sure you explain everything if you can provide proofs. And if yes, you give the details. So again, the date, the description, the location, the number of guests, who performed the ceremony, etc. Then we have, did any of the following people go to any of the events below? The principal applicant's parent, the sponsor's parent, the children, etc. And you have to answer yes and no. And if not, if the close member did not participate, you have to explain why. Again, the reason must be valid. Are either of you pregnant? Yes or no? And once you're done, you sign. So this is the sponsor signature, the Canadian citizen or permanent resident. Here's the principal applicant signature, the person asking for a visa. Make sure you date. And if you don't have an interpreter, you can leave this blank. And once you're done, you save your form and you upload it to your portal here. Once you're done uploading, you're going to have the same thing here, IMM 5532, with the little check mark here. Last form you need to upload is the checklist. I encourage you to use this one, but at the end. When you're done, you're going to follow the checklist because it contains all the forms you need to fill. You can see here document checklist for the spouse, that's 5533. This is the document in question. And all the forms for the sponsor, all the forms for the principal applicant, and for the class of application. So this is quite long. We're not going to cover it in this video, but if you have specific question, enter them in the comment and I'll do my best to answer you promptly. That's it for this one. Once you are done with the forms, the next part is going to be the supporting document. You can see here you have travel document, passport, police certificate, photos, birth certificate, and proof of status in Canada. And you have the little eye here when you can click and it gives you what is considered proof of status. Once you're done, you can upload additional documents. You have a list here. Let's say, for example, that you want to upload a letter of support from your parents in Canada that say that they're going to be hosting you for the first few months while you arrive. You add the letter of support, you upload it here, and you join it to your application. Once you're done, you have to pay the fees and sign the declaration, and then you submit your application. So I know this is a lot, but make sure you follow the steps. First, you enter these mandatory forms, and then you enter the PDF form and you sign them. And once you have the PDF form filled, you download the IMM 5533 checklist and you follow along with all the forms and all the supportive document in the checklist. That's it. If you have any questions, put them in the comment and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.